The Broomstick Train, or The Return of the Witches, by Oliver Wendell Holmes. Look out, boys! Clear the track! The witches are here, they've all come back. They hanged them high, no use, no use. What cares a witch for a hangman's noose? They buried them deep, but they wouldn't lie still, for cats and witches are hard to kill. They swore they shouldn't and wouldn't die. Books said they did, but they lie, they lie. A couple of 100 years or so they had knocked about in the world below, when an Essex deacon dropped in to call, and a homesick feeling seized them all, for he came from a place they knew full well, and many a tale he had to tell. They longed to visit the haunts of men, to see the old dwellings they knew again, and ride on their broomsticks all around their wide domain of unhallowed ground. In Essex County there's many a roof well known to him of the cloven hoof. The small square windows are full in view, which the midnight hags went sailing through, on their well-trained broomsticks mounted high, seen like shadows against the sky, crossing the track of owls and bats, hugging before them their coal-black cats. Well did they know, those gray old wives, the sights we see in our daily drives: shimmer of lake and shine of sea, Brown's bare hill with its lonely tree. It wasn't then as we see it now, with one scant scalp-lock to shade its brow. Dusky nooks in the Essex woods, dark, dim, Dante-like solitudes, where the tree-toad watches the sinuous snake glide through his forests of fern and brake. Ipswich River, its old stone bridge, far off Andover's Indian ridge, and many a scene where history tells some shadow of bygone terror dwells, of Norman's woe with its tale of dread, of the screeching woman of Marblehead. The fearful story that turns men pale, don't bid me tell it, my speech would fail. Who would not, will not, if he can, bathe in the breezes of fair Cape Ann, rest in the bowers her bays enfold, loved by the sachems and squaws of old? Home, where the white magnolias bloom, sweet with the bayberry's chaste perfume, hugged by the woods and kissed by the sea, where is the Eden like to thee? For that couple of 100 years, or so, there had been no peace in the world below, the witches still grumbling, "It isn't fair! Come, give us a taste of the upper air! We've had enough of your sulphur springs, and the evil odor that round them clings. We long for a drink that is cool and nice, great buckets of water with Wenham ice. We've served you well upstairs, you know. You're a good old fellow, come, let us go." I don't feel sure of his being good, but he happened to be in a pleasant mood, as fiends with their skins full sometimes are. He'd been drinking with roughs at a Boston bar. So what does he do but up and shout to a gray-beard turnkey, "Let 'em out!" To mind his orders was all he knew. The gates swung open, and out they flew. "Where are our broomsticks?" the beldams cried. "Here are your broomsticks," an imp replied. "They've been in the place you know so long, they smell of brimstone uncommon strong. But they've gained by being left alone. Just look, and you'll see how tall they've grown." "And where is my cat?" a vixen squalled. "Yes, where are our cats?" the witches bawled, and began to call them all by name, and as fast as they called the cats they came. There was bob-tailed Tommy, and long-tailed Tim, and wall-eyed Jacky, and green-eyed Jim, and splay-foot Benny, and slim-legged Bo, and Skinny, and Squally, and Jerry, and Joe, and many another that came at call. It would take too long to count them all. All black, one could hardly tell which was which, but every cat knew his own old witch, and she knew hers as hers knew her. Ah, didn't they curl their tails and purr! No sooner the withered hags were free than out they swarmed for a midnight spree. I couldn't tell all they did in rhymes, but the Essex people had dreadful times. The Swampscott fishermen still relate how a strange sea monster stole their bait, how their nets were tangled in loops and knots, and they found dead crabs in their lobster pots. Poor Danvers grieved for her blasted crops, and Wilmington mourned over mildewed hops. A blight played havoc with Beverly beans. It was all the work of those hateful queens. A dreadful panic began at Pride's, where the witches stopped in their midnight rides, and there rose strange rumors and vague alarms mid the peaceful dwellers at Beverly Farms. Now when the boss of the beldams found that without his leave they were ramping round, he called, They could hear him 20 miles, from Chelsea Beach to the Misery Isles. The deafest old granny knew his tone without the trick of the telephone. "Come here, you witches, come here," says he. "At your games of old without asking me? I'll give you a little job to do that will keep you stirring, you godless crew." They came, of course, at their master's call, the witches, the broomsticks, the cats, and all. He led the hags to a railway train the horses were trying to drag in vain. "Now then," says he, "you've had your fun, and here are the cars you've got to run. The driver may just unhitch his team, we don't want horses, we don't want steam. You may keep your old black cats to hug, but the loaded train you've got to lug." Since then on many a car you'll see a broomstick plain as plain can be. On every stick there's a witch astride. The string, you see, to her leg is tied. She will do a mischief if she can, but the string is held by a careful man, and whenever the evil-minded witch would cut some caper, he gives a twitch. As for the hag, you can't see her, but hark, you can hear her black cat's purr, and now and then as a car goes by, you may catch a gleam from her wicked eye. Often you've looked on a rushing train, but just what moved it was not so plain. It couldn't be those wires above, for they could neither pull nor shove. Where was the motor that made it go? You couldn't guess, but now you know. Remember my rhymes when you ride again on the rattling rail by the Broomstick Train. End of the Broomstick Train, recorded by Laurieann Walden.